I don't even know how to start this except to say, I never expected my life to go the way it did. If you had told me years ago that I would one day walk away from Islam, the faith of my parents, my grandparents, my culture, my whole identity, I would have laughed in your face. Or maybe even been offended. I was proud to be a Muslim. I wore my hijab properly, prayed 5 times a day, fasted during Ramadan without skipping. I read the Quran in Arabic, even if I didn't understand all of it. I was the kind of girl everyone thought was strong in her faith. But what no one saw was that deep, aching void inside me. I had all the outward things in place, but my heart was restless. And I didn't understand why. I was 29, living in the Netherlands, working, taking care of myself, doing life as expected. But I was also secretly sinking. I would wake up with this heaviness in my chest, like a weight I couldn't shake off. I started feeling disconnected from people, from my prayers, even from myself. I thought maybe I was just being ungrateful, so I doubled down. More Quran, more supplication, more rules, but nothing changed. There were moments when I would kneel down to pray and just stare at the carpet. My lips moved, but my heart was numb. I would ask Allah to help me, to guide me, to show me why I felt so lost, but all I got back was silence. Just silence. And so in secret, I started searching. Not because I wanted to betray anything. I just needed peace, real peace. I started watching videos, some about Islam, some about spirituality, even some about Christianity, although that felt forbidden. Still, I watched. I was hungry, desperate. One night, I stumbled upon a video of a woman who used to be Muslim, who said she met Jesus in a dream. I thought she was crazy, but something about the way she spoke, it pierced something in me. I couldn't shake it. I watched that video 3 times in one night, and then it happened to me. It was late. I was in bed, not asleep, but not fully awake either. I felt this intense heat, like a fire moving through my body. My heart was racing. My eyes were open, but I couldn't move. And then I saw him. I can't explain how I knew it was Jesus, but I just knew. He didn't speak out loud, but his presence filled the room. I felt seen, completely, loved, completely, and terrified, because I didn't understand what was happening. I had never felt anything like that before. It was not like when I prayed in the mosque or read the Quran. It was different. Personal. Alive. The moment passed and I was left shaking. For days I told no one, but the hunger grew stronger. I started reading the Bible in secret on my phone. I would go to the park just to sit and read without anyone knowing. And the words, they spoke to me. Not just my mind, but my heart. Jesus said things like, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest." I cried when I read that. It felt like he was speaking directly to me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to perform or strive or be perfect to be loved. I just was. The dreams started after that. I had several. One of them still shakes me when I think about it. In the dream, I was walking through a desert, thirsty, tired, desperate. I looked up and saw a man in white standing at the end of the path, holding a jar of water. He called my name, Samira. And his voice sounded like thunder wrapped in gentleness. I ran to him, and he gave me the water. I drank it, and immediately I felt alive. Whole. I woke up sobbing. I couldn't deny it anymore. Jesus was calling me, but I was afraid, terrified. If I accepted what I now believed to be true, what would that mean for my life, my family, my safety? I wasn't naive. I knew what happened to people who left Islam. And I didn't want to hurt my mother. But I also couldn't lie to myself anymore. Something had shifted. Jesus wasn't just a prophet to me, he was Lord. One night, I broke. I knelt beside my bed, not with prayer beads or a rug, just me and my tears, and I whispered, "Jesus, I don't know how to do this. But if you are real, and if you are who you say you are, I give you my life." I expected the ceiling to fall or lightning to strike. But what happened was even more powerful. I felt peace. Deep, soul-level peace. It washed over me like waves. I felt held. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged to someone. I didn't tell anyone for a while. I needed time. Time to process, to pray, to read more. I found a small church far from where I lived. I slipped in during a weekday prayer meeting, and no one asked questions. They just welcomed me. The pastor's wife hugged me without knowing anything about me, and I cried in her arms like a little girl. It felt like coming home. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Telling my family, facing the consequences. I wasn't ready for that yet. I was still trying to understand who I was now, but one thing I knew for sure. I had met Jesus. He was real. He loved me, and my life would never be the same again. I remember waking up the morning after I gave my life to Jesus, and for the first few seconds, everything felt calm. But then the fear crept back in. What had I done? What was I going to do now? I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and I knew it. My phone was buzzing with messages from my cousins, my sister, even my mother. I had missed a family gathering the night before, on purpose, because I couldn't fake it anymore. I didn't want to sit in a room full of people talking about Allah while my heart was crying out to Jesus. So I stayed home and prayed in secret, and now the silence from me was becoming suspicious. I ignored the messages. For a whole week, I avoided phone calls and stuck to work and church visits. The church had quickly become a hiding place for me, even though I hadn't told anyone there who I truly was. I was still just visiting, just curious, but they loved me anyway. No one asked why I looked over my shoulder every few minutes. No one questioned why I didn't give my full name. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. But breathing didn't stop the war that had started inside me. One day after work, I sat in my car and cried for what felt like hours. I was exhausted, emotionally, spiritually. I felt split in two. One part of me was alive with a new kind of joy and purpose, and the other part of me was mourning the life I knew was slipping away. I was mourning my mother, her warm smile, her calls reminding me to fast, her voice praying over me in Arabic. I was mourning the sound of the Quran recitations from my childhood, the smell of Friday dinners, the rhythm of a culture I had once embraced. And yet, in the middle of that mourning, I still knew I had made the right decision. It was in that moment of pain that I felt Jesus whisper again, not audibly, but in that way he does, deep in your spirit. He said, "You're not alone." And I believed him. I drove straight to the church that night. The doors were open. It was prayer night again. The same pastor's wife saw me, smiled, and this time she said, "Would you like to talk?" I nodded. We sat in the back room, and I told her everything. Everything. My past, my fears, my family, the dreams, the encounter, the moment I said yes to Jesus. She cried with me. She prayed with me. And for the first time, I said the words out loud, "I'm a Christian now." That night marked the beginning of my new life. Not just in secret, but in the open, at least within that church. They welcomed me with love I had never experienced. One woman even offered me a place to stay if I ever needed it. And I realized then that Jesus wasn't just rescuing my soul. He was rebuilding my life, brick by brick, through these people. But things changed drastically a few weeks later. My sister found a Bible in my bag. I had hidden it under clothes, zipped up, tucked away. But she was borrowing my sweater and opened it without asking. Her face went pale. She didn't even say anything, just stared at me, then walked out of the room. I chased her, begging her not to tell anyone, trying to explain. But she was furious. Her voice shook as she said, "You are not my sister anymore." That broke me more than I can put into words. It didn't matter that I was the same Samira who had helped raise her, who had cooked her favorite meals, who had walked her to school. None of that mattered now, she told my mother. Within days, the entire extended family knew. My uncle sent me a message saying I had shamed the family, and that if I didn't repent and return to Islam, I would be disowned. My mother called me sobbing, asking what she did wrong. She pleaded with me, begged me, told me she had failed as a mother. I tried to explain. I told her I wasn't rejecting her or our culture. I had simply found something. Someone who had changed my heart, but to her, it was betrayal. She hung up on me. That night, I cried until I couldn't breathe. Things got worse. My landlord, who was a distant relative, told me I had 30 days to move out. I lost friends. Invitations stopped coming. I became a ghost in the community I had once been part of. People crossed the street to avoid me. A man I had once considered marrying told others I was possessed. I wasn't just rejected. I was treated like I had become dangerous. But in the loneliness, Jesus was there. Every morning I opened the Bible and read verses that kept me standing. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. That verse in Matthew became my lifeline. It reminded me that I wasn't the first to suffer for his name, and I wouldn't be the last. One night, I had another dream. In it, I was on a stormy sea in a tiny boat, rain pouring, waves crashing. I was screaming for help. And then Jesus appeared on the water. He walked calmly through the storm and stepped into my boat. The moment he did, everything stilled. He didn't say anything. He just held my hand. I woke up in tears, but not of fear, of peace. After that dream, I found strength I didn't know I had. I started studying the Word seriously. I enrolled in an online discipleship course under a different name. I even began writing out my story, just for myself at first, then eventually to share. I knew now that my pain had a purpose. I was being prepared, refined. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew who held me. That season was the darkest and brightest of my life. I lost everything I thought defined me: family, home, community. But I found Jesus, and in him I discovered who I truly was. Not just Samira the ex-Muslim, not just Samira the outcast, but Samira, the daughter of the king. And nothing, absolutely nothing, could take that away from me. The months that followed were quiet, but not empty. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, far from the neighborhood where everyone knew my family name. It was old and barely furnished, but it was mine. And more than that, it was a place where I could worship Jesus freely. I would light a candle every morning and sit in silence before opening my Bible. I was finally building a relationship with God that wasn't built on fear, but on love, on trust, on truth. I would read the Gospels and sometimes just weep at the words of Jesus. They felt alive. Every time he touched the leper, spoke to the woman at the well, or forgave the sinner, I felt like he was speaking to me. Like he had seen me my whole life, even when I was hidden in a headscarf, crying myself to sleep, asking if God even noticed I was there. One evening, I got a knock on the door. It startled me. Hardly anyone visited me. When I opened it, I found a woman I hadn't seen since childhood. Aisha, a cousin I had once played with in the courtyard during Eid celebrations. She looked nervous, glancing behind her before stepping inside quickly. Her voice trembled when she spoke. She had heard what happened to me. She said the family was furious, that they'd officially disowned me, that my name was no longer allowed to be mentioned in certain homes. And yet, her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Samira, I need to know, is it true? Is Jesus really the way?" My heart nearly stopped. I had prayed for this, for the opportunity to share, even if just once, what had happened to me. I didn't preach. I didn't recite Bible verses. I simply told her the truth. I told her about the dreams, the encounter, the peace I found. I told her how I had wrestled with it, how I hadn't chosen this out of rebellion, but because the love I found in Jesus was unlike anything I had ever experienced. She listened, quietly crying. Then she asked if she could borrow a Bible. I gave her mine. It was marked up and underlined and worn from all my nights of reading, but it was filled with life. She took it like it was treasure. That night changed something in me. I realized that the pain I had endured wasn't in vain. Jesus hadn't just rescued me for my own sake, he wanted to reach others through my story. And so I stopped hiding. I started speaking, carefully of course, quietly. I joined an underground group of former Muslims who had come to faith in Christ. We met in secret, sometimes in homes, sometimes in abandoned buildings. We worshipped in whispers, prayed with our eyes open, always alert, but never afraid. Because we knew the one who had saved us was worth everything. One day, a man shared his testimony. His name was Khalid, and he had once been a Quran teacher. His story was so different from mine but carried the same heartbeat, an undeniable encounter with Jesus that left him forever changed. After the meeting, we ended up talking for hours. Not about ourselves, but about what it meant to live boldly, to walk in love when surrounded by hatred, and to forgive those who had hurt us the most. That night, we exchanged numbers. Weeks turned into months, and eventually, Khalid and I were married. Not because it was easy or convenient, but because we both knew what it meant to lose everything and gain Christ. Together, we began ministering to others like us. Women who had been beaten, abandoned, silenced. Men who had questions but were too afraid to ask them aloud. We listened, we prayed, we opened our home to them. And slowly, Jesus built a family out of the broken. He made beauty from ashes, again and again. But the threats never stopped. I would sometimes receive messages from unknown numbers, warnings, curses, even death threats. Once, someone threw a rock through our window with a note tied around it that said, "Traitor." My heart would race every time I stepped outside, but I refused to live in fear, because perfect love casts out fear. And his love had made me brave.